welcoming all our viewers and guests onto International Affairs. This is being broadcasted live from the SATV's Gulshan studio. My name is Shamsul Alam Panto. As I bring you the important updates from over the weekend, before I begin the discussion today, introducing my panel. Here in the studio, I have John Dalton, our international consultant. I welcome you, sir, onto the program. Alongside, we will have Norman Floyd Barnes, our geopolitical correspondent from District of Columbia, Washington, joining us all the way in United States of America. I want to begin the discussion regarding how geopolitics is right now failing in understanding the world importance, needs and the wants of people on every territory there is, especially regarding the Strait of Hormuz. Previously, the United States of America has imposed a blockade on all ships coming in and forth from this strait. This important geographical location is now dictating how life will be lived all across the planet as well as here in Bangladesh. I want to begin the discussion with Norman Floyd Barnes. We know there has been a story regarding the IRGC opening fire to turn away two Indian vessels that were trying to exit the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, they had to listen or face gunfire from the IRGC in a naval warfare. All of this new created situation. In about 24 hours, the Strait of Hormuz went from being closed initially, then open, and right now is again closed to all kinds of ships that are using this strait. And of course, the attention is also now being thrown at the Bab al-Mandab Strait, which is also across in Yemen, going through the Red Sea. I want to begin with Norman. What are some of the updates you have for us over the weekend? How do you predict the upcoming days, especially as we see the 2-week ceasefire is coming to an end? Norman.
Good morning from Washington, D.C.
Good morning.
The home of misinformation. Friday, we was in a state of mind that we had a ceasefire in place. The strait was open briefly, and the United States had a blockade which was in full force then. As a consequence of this behavior, the Iranian government decided to close the strait again. Now, take in mind, as we talking about this, the markets was affected by it. Oil prices dropped. Trading went up. Everything went up for a period of 24 hours. Then Iran said, no, not so fast. We're going to close it to all traffic going through the strait as long as the United States hold this blockade. So right now, the situation is if a ship goes to, like the two Indian flag vessels go through, they will be assaulted, attacked by the Iranian government with their speedboats. So right now, the situation has gone from potential to extremely awful, the situation. And more importantly, the scheduled talks about ceasefire has been delayed, postponed, and maybe destroyed because of this measure. So as we speak, in 24 hours, the door was open. Now the door is closed, and we're looking at additional response from the United States. One of the responses I heard, this is the word I heard, is that from the, I think it's coming from the Pentagon, the U.S. is going to up its economic attack on the country of Iran globally. I hope this is not a fact, because what's happening, as you look at what's been happening over the last month, every action is a counteraction. So if we attack their interests globally, what do you think they're going to do? Good morning.
Right, very important beginning to our discussion from Norman Floyd Barnes. There has been some specific changes here in Bangladesh as well, even after having a full storage, even after overwhelming the storage capacity for crude oil as well as the energy supplies. We are also seeing a slight increase in the prices of octane, diesel, kerosene, and likewise. And it has come after almost 2 months or a month and a half into this war. Not only so, we see another centric opening up. It is important to analyze and feel how this crisis actually hampers day-to-day communications and lifestyle. I want to have this question to John Dalton. Sir, what do you think? The war has progressed. There has been one round of talk in Islamabad, fruiting no kind of result. And right now, it's confusion is creeping in once more.
Yeah, let me go back to the original point that you made to make a slight correction or clarification.
Please.
The U.S. blockade was only for ships that are departing from Iranian ports, carrying oil from Iran.
Yeah.
Any oil that was coming from Iraq or any other kind of place through the Straits of Hormuz was not affected directly. The blockade was on Iran. And this was actually counted to the kind of ceasefire agreement, like, well, now you're waging economic war against us during the ceasefire period, trying to prevent us from earning enough income for any source. So in light of that blockade that prevented Iran from shipping its oil out to its allies, including China, that's when they decided, okay, well, then we'll just block the whole thing again. We'll go back to the condition, antecedent condition, and say, okay, nobody goes out. If our ships can't go out with oil, then nobody's ships can go out with oil. And we will enforce it. So the U.S. blockade creates a problem, a bigger problem than it was designed to solve, which has been the continuing pattern of what has happened in the Israeli-Iran war. Every time there's an action by the U.S., it creates a counter problem which is bigger than what was the original problem. So I'm hoping that cooler heads will prevail, as they say, that somehow in the negotiation, Trump will be able to say, okay, I'm lifting the blockade as long as Iran does not interfere with any transport through the Straits of Hormuz. And then he claims credit for correcting a problem that he created, which is typical of Trump.
Right.
Now, the situation here, you have excess capacity. This was clearly a policy decision that did not work effectively. Supply side controls in a time when commodity is under stress is not an effective policy. You have to affect the demand side. You have to affect the behavior of people. You can't simply say we're going to limit the amount of supply we give to Ponto or anybody else or John or anybody else.
Right.
What you have to do is to say we are going to try to regulate the demand. We can do that by limiting the number of times people can go to get gas. We can limit that to specific hours when it's available. And we can make sure that people, instead of going and getting 2 liters, like a motorcycle can go and get 2 liters, if they've got 12-liter capacity, let them fill up and never come back into the queue. If a Prado has 80-liter capacity, let them fill up and not go back into the queue. Same thing with a regular car, 20 liters, okay? Fill it up. But what's happening is, by restricting the amount of supply, a motorcycle guy goes there, he gets 2 liters, he's got to come back 24 hours if he's a motorcycle taxi. And it's just a wrong-headed policy. There's excess supply. In fact, when there's a ship in Chittagong ready to come into the port, it will exceed the capacity of the government to store it.
So they
have to leave it on the ship because the tanks are not capable of taking on any more supply. So this is a supply side problem created by the government, which needed a demand side solution. You got to change behavior, change attitude, change the way the government manages the demand for this precious commodity. Can be done, but now people sort of baked into a way of doing business. I don't know about you, but I know when I was here before and there was a demand, there was a problem. What would happen is we would send our driver at 10 o'clock at night to sit in the queue for like 10 hours to get the gas. I wasn't affected by it. The wealthy people aren't affected by it. You're not affected by it, but your driver's getting worn to the bone sitting in the traffic just waiting for the line to open up so he can get some gas. So it's bad public policy all around.
Right, very important statement from John Dalton regarding a localized issue here in Bangladesh, an example for international markets worldwide. And that opens up a huge arena of discussion. We see an example set here in Bangladesh. We've also seen rising cost of energy costs going up in India, almost 4 to 5 days of protests that happened last week. So it's not just a localized issue, it affects households everywhere on this planet. And again, once again, as of this Sunday, Hormuz is now again closed, and from Larak Island is where the IRGC Navy plans to coordinate this kind of movement. Of course, the captains of the vessels, of the Indian vessels that were attacked, they were continuously in communication with the IRGC Navy, and they had said that you do not have permission to pass. And of course, these are comments that will have drastic effects on mankind for the coming days and weeks. But there is a situation that we see with the allies of Iran. We can also talk about China and how China is trying to understand this situation. And that is exactly what I want to ask Norman Floyd Barnes. We know over the last week, several Chinese ships were given exit from the Strait of Hormuz. However, that is not the situation today. Other allies such as Russia and North Korea are also ramping up their military strategies. For example, Kim Jong-un of North Korea is testing his missiles every other day, and that does set a new example for the entire world that we must be militarily ready for any kind of confrontation. So that is the point I want to ask Norman Floyd. What do you think about the allies that are in support of Iran in the current stage? Norman.
Well, I would look at you said support of Iran. There's not much of support. It's basically an alternative. They are looking at how do we get the resources we need? How do we keep our day going on? How do we make money? How do we survive? As you may know, Europe is in a situation where they're almost in shortage of jet fuel,
Right.
and how to get that going. And here we got coming up next month. We start the summer holidays. People want to travel. People want to fly. So the shortage is going to have a stranglehold on the travel globally around the world, not having enough fuel. Flights going to be canceled. We're going to have other issues that come up. And this situation is going to intensify. We're in a hot mess because of these bad decisions, lack of communications, and some really good strategic planning is happening right now in terms of Iran. They are basically putting the pressure on the Gulf states, and they're basically the idea you don't have to do it, but the intimidation part is kicked in full force to the point where some of the countries in the Gulf state has stated that if the United States start its military aggressions again, they are not going to allow the U.S. to launch from their countries, which is going to cause a real logistical problem for the United States. And the
Right.
reason for that is that they have found that when the United States attack Iran, Iran attacks the neighbors who are supportive of the United States missions, bases, soldiers, anything to do, they are attacking them directly. So to avoid that, they are taking the approach that, hey, we understand, but you can't launch from our countries because we are vulnerable and you cannot protect us. And that's the issue that we're going to see moving forward, that the United States Achilles heel is that they can't be everywhere all the time. And that is causing a problem because Iran don't have to be everywhere, but we have to be everywhere to catch everything. They just need to get one or two in between attacks going on and disruptions, infrastructure attacks. It will have a profound effect over the whole geopolitical world, trade, commerce, everything. The price of gas, the price of water, the price of everything goes up by the actions of destroying a whole area. So basically, Iran has their own. We're talking about nuclear weapon or nuclear bomb. They have it. They have a hand around the Strait and the Red Sea. They can control the epic flow of 30 or to 50% of the world flow of energy,
Right.
resources, food, uh, other things that need to make the world go round. So they have that control. So they don't have to have an army. They just have their hands around the Gulf area region in terms of controlling what flows in and out. Until we get a new infrastructure system, this is the new world we got to live in. We have to understand we're going to have to deal with the devil, and they don't have an army, they don't have the resources, but they do have a big hand. Thank you.
Right. Very important statement from Norman Floyd Barnes regarding how far Iran has control over these various locations. If you wanted to add as well.
I do. I think that the whole idea that, like, okay, we have the atomic bomb, but as Norman has indicated, they have control over that one strategic location. And so from a military point of view, from a strategy point of view, they are controlling the situation. I mean, if you're playing a game of any kind of chess, they are clearly in control of the board because they have this critical infrastructure which they control by international law and which they are able to manipulate to prevent fuel from passing through it. And so they're winning this war, so-called, by having a better strategy, as Norman has just indicated.
Right, very important once again. And you mentioned international law. So there is a debate regarding this very term, international law, whether it applies to when Israel is attacking southern Lebanon, and if it doesn't apply when Iran tries to retaliate for defending its own sovereignty. And it is a big debate. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall get back to you on this very topic. However, it's time to take a short commercial break.
President Trump is expected to hold bilateral talks.
Preserving biodiversity and tackling climate change.
We cannot protect the planet before we negotiate peace.
Where is it going? Is it understanding the needs of its people before the needs of this global world?
For China to come to agreement,
They will face better projects.
With President Xi of China and President Lee of South Korea.
Trump's White House that is in favor of these things.
Simply not enough action being taken to address the problem of fossil fuels.
What their plan initially is towards the Caribbean, a place that has been met with two types of disasters.
Bangladeshi students at the same level of opportunity internationally and domestically.
International Affairs. Watch every Sunday to Thursday at 2 p.m. only on SATV and SATV Digital.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back on International Affairs. Today, I am joined with John Dalton here in the studio, and across Zoom, we have Norman Floyd Barnes as well as Mohammad Musab Shabir. He is connected from Islamabad, Pakistan. I have some interesting questions I want to ask him. However, I want to give the news to our viewers as well. The UN Interim Force in Lebanon, also known as UNIFIL, said it launched an investigation after its positions came under attack under small arms fire from non-state actors. This is, of course, in southern Lebanon. And not only so, we have an incident where French President Emmanuel Macron is stating one French soldier was killed and 3 others were wounded in an attack in southern Lebanon targeting the UN Interim Force in Lebanon. This is a very important topic that we can talk about. And not only so, we see that Lebanon's Hezbollah group denied any kind of involvement in this very incident. Over the weekend, we see Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron to discuss how the Strait of Hormuz shall operate, and 40 other nations are planning on some kind of grouping to understand to keep this waterway open. I want to begin this part with Mohammad Musab. joining from Islamabad, Pakistan. I want to ask you, how did you see the first round of talks, Islamabad? We see that some of the debt financing has been going on for Pakistan and not as well. We see that the entire global world order is once again being challenged. We are coming towards the end of the ceasefire initially stated. And as per the breaking news, Donald Trump says that he is going to take another 5 days to understand the talks between the two sides. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian says that they must declare either a win or a loss through dignity. It has to come to an end where it's level-headed. I want to know how you feel about it, Mohammad Musab.
Personally, on a very personal level, I feel that things behind closed doors are different from what is happening on social media platforms between United States of America, Israel, and Iran. At this time, what we need to understand is that all three parties involved have huge domestic galleries that they want to play for. The US has a midterm election coming on this year. The Israelis not just have general elections around the corner, they also, Netanyahu also has Epstein cases that he's facing. I was just reading that Netanyahu is calling this a war of civilizations, and he's saying that it might be the end of the Israeli civilization if they don't fight for it. At the same time, what we need to understand is that the Iranians have had the biggest loss during this war when their supreme leader, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, was martyred on the opening day of this war. So, Mujtaba Khamenei, as we cannot confirm this because sources within Iran will never confirm this, but according to different reports, Mujtaba Khamenei is in a bad health state at this point in time. Having said that, obviously all three countries have huge galleries to play to because they have 47 years of enmity, 47 years of mistrust, 47 years of constantly fighting each other, not just with words, but in different parts of the world as well. So, keeping all of that in mind, it's obviously a very tough task getting all three of them sit on a table and make sure that no future war will happen. So when the first round of Islamabad talks was held, we had two drafts in the public knowledge or public domain. One was the 15-point demand by the United States of America, and one was the 10-point demand by the Iranian regime. And these were talking points. And if you look closely at both set of demands, you'll understand that both countries were very far off from reaching any sort of conclusion. But I still feel that things are moving in the right direction. Although both countries will now are now seemingly saying that no second round is happening. From Islamabad, I can confirm you news that I got just minutes before I joined this program that the two major hotels in Islamabad, Marriott and Serena, as you would recall, was the venue for the first round of Islamabad talks. Both these hotels have been told that they need to be cleared. They've even issued notices to people living inside the hotels, people who have bookings throughout the week. They've been issued notices to clear these hotels by midday today. It's 1:28 p.m. right now in Islamabad. Also, all major girls and boys hostels in the twin cities of Islamabad and Rawalpindi have been issued notices and have been told to clear by tonight. Major transportation hubs where public transport usually starts from have been told that they cannot operate during this week. So this means that behind closed doors, things are moving in the right direction. The chances might be slim, which is the case with all such talks. But I believe that the Pakistani leadership, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shahbaz Sharif, who was on a tri-nation visit, just landed back yesterday. And also, the Chief of Defense Forces, Field Marshal Asim Munir, he came back from Iran, which was a very extensive trip. And it is being said worldwide that the Iranians are being the tough negotiators during these talks. The US has a set of demands that it wants to stick to, but Iranians are not coming around it. So I believe that things are moving in the right direction. Also, international foreign journalists who want to cover these talks are constantly applying. So my sources within the external publicity wing in the Ministry of Information in Pakistan are now confirming that most people will now be entertained again. So yes, I believe that whatever is happening on social media is for the optics of local consumption, but behind closed doors, things are moving in the right direction. The only problem that I see in these talks, the round two of these talks, is how will the Israeli government behave? Because them breaking the Lebanese ceasefire has put everything under the radar. Things which were moving on a very positive direction up until yesterday, when even the offices of the Iranian regime and the US president were all very confident. The oil markets were responding, stock markets were responding to this positivity. Everything took a downward spiral after Israel broke the Lebanese ceasefire that was brokered by the United States of America. So, as most political commentators, as most geopolitical commentators, most people who understand defense and security, the only question in this whole arrangement is who will be able to provide a guarantee that the United States of America still has control over the Israeli regime, because Iran's sticking point has always been guarantees that there will be no future war.
Right. Very important updates coming from Mohammad Musa, especially the one regarding a second round of talk, a possible second round of talk. We are seeing very small symptoms of hotels being cleared there in the capital in Islamabad. Very important updates coming in. I want to switch to Norman Floyd Burns to get a reaction from Washington. Is there any kind of indication that a second round of talk is important? And a background for you, sir. We know that the statehood of Palestinian statehood, the two-state solution, all of these are being sidelined in the midst of this war. And of course, it talks about the determination of Palestinian people. Now, if you look across from Palestine, today that same determination of Lebanese people are being questioned once again by Israel. And given the situation, more escalation towards Lebanon would give Iran a clear signal to continue this war and not sit for negotiations. How do you see this, Norman?
Thank you for the question. The pattern is very habit forming. Israel has a pattern that they're using. They're using Palestine. They're using in the region. They're using the same thing with Lebanon. Basically, they say, yes, we will agree to a conversation about a ceasefire. But at the same time, our military is still keeping on with their plan. Their mission is to basically to seek and destroy, to cause confusion, to claim, annex land, and to hunt for Hezbollah, as they stated. We heard this story before. So nothing has changed in terms of the military. Even though they are talking, the military has a mission, and they have not been told to stop. So everything goes on just like it was nothing occurred in terms of the military. Yes, you're having this conversation, you have agreements, you have a cup of tea, coffee and tea, cookies, but we are still going to blow your country up. That's exactly what they're doing. They have not been told to slow down one iota, and everything is moving towards the similar situation like what happened in Gaza, unfinished business, destroy the infrastructure, displace the people, control the area, make it unlivable, make it so bad that no one, not even a crow, a bird, or a cockroach will want to stay in that area. So that is what they do, and that's what they do well. conversations and ceasefire and peace negotiation is not something they want. So basically, this is something basically about time. I know what you're talking about. At the same time, I'm carrying on with the mission. The mission is to destroy, and that's what they're doing.
Right. Very valid statements put on the table from Norman Floyd Barnes. Of course, as per Norman, Israel's stance is very passive-aggressive. They will have tea, coffee and biscuits, but also blow them up to smithereens. And that is the motto of Israel, as far as media suggests, as far as the administration in Israel suggests as well. We see coming back to the partnership between the US and Israel, and how Middle Eastern politics, diplomacy is now being dictated in some form or manner, Iran to not have a nuclear weapon. If you look at the other side of the story, if they did have a nuclear weapon, what would they have done? And why is it such an important issue, especially nuclear weapons? When you come to think of it, it's good for us to provide our energy requirement, but when it comes to warfare, it has devastating effects, as we've seen, as history has shown us once in this last century. So if Iran is not supposed to have a nuclear weapon, why should any country have these weapons in the first place? Sir, I want to get a reaction.
Yeah, well, I think that, I think I agree with the general premise of that the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Agreement is really designed to allow people to have this defensive weaponry, but never to use it. And interestingly, the only country that has used nuclear weapons in the past has been the United States and Japan. And the only known chief executive of a country who has said, well, why do I have all these weapons and I can't use them, is basically Donald Trump. Now, I said here before, and I'll say it again, and Norman has hit on it as well. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, is not under civilian control. What Netanyahu and others say has no effect on the military establishment and their priorities.
Yeah.
They proceed on
Correct.
their own mission. And therefore, all diplomatic means out the window. The hard line in Israeli Defense Force will do exactly what they did in Gaza, in southern Lebanon. They will continue to attack, destroy, because they are not under civilian control. This is a force unto itself. They're able to operate outside of government control. So when Trump and Netanyahu say, no more, you're not going to do this absolutely again, falls on deaf ears, because the Israeli Defense Force is so supported by the Knesset, is so deeply ingrained in the society. Don't forget, they have mandatory participation in the military.
Right. So
they are a cultural, social, political force outside of the government, and they have an agenda to hate and destroy. So, one last point. The 10-point
Sure.
plan that Mustafa was mentioning, Mohammed was mentioning. The last point in the 10-point plan from Iran was to disengage from Lebanon. That Israel would disengage from Lebanon. And Israel said, no, hey, we're not part of that agreement. I mean, whatever the U.S. and Iran do on the side, we don't, not in favor of it anyway. But the last thing we're going to do is to cede our sovereign authority to you two parties to decide what happens in Lebanon. We will decide what happens in Lebanon. And that's when Trump became engaged, and they tried to bring about some sort of a ceasefire. It's all eyewash. They want to simply control that whole area, no matter what diplomatic means there are. It's an aggressive, militaristic, Zionist government which believes that they have the right to control all of the land in that area. And if we have one more second, I'd like to make a distinction.
Please.
I'd like to make a distinction between how Israel sees this and how other people do. There's a word that's from the river to the sea. People hear that. That's the Muslim position, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean. The Israeli position is from the Nile to the Euphrates, from the Nile River in Egypt up to the Euphrates River in Turkey. That they imagine is their holy land that they have a right and have a mission to try to control. So everywhere, their whole attitude is that this is our biblical right, this is our land, we will do everything we can to fight for it, and anybody who's in our way better look out.
Of course, a very important example that you have said regarding how the countries and the nations see the situation in their own eyes, especially Israel sees as itself as a dominating power.
They even said Turkey is next.
Yeah, and not only so, there has been attacks inside Turkey, school shootings too. Some are saying that it may be a conspiracy headed by a foreign government.
Well, he tried to fire up the Kurds. Remember, we had this conversation last week. He said, oh,
Definitely.
the Kurds in your country. So, there's always some kind of a little activity that you can trace back to Israel, to they're trying to make mischief, they're trying to create war.
Political jousting between Turkey and Israel, as we've seen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a short break. That was very beautifully delivered by you. So thank you. It's time for a short break. Hello and welcome to International Affairs, and my name is Shamsul Alam Pantho.
I don't see an easy resolution to this because every slight deviation from the plan,
opening an open war conflict with them,
testing nuclear missiles,
Russia's announcement of these supposedly successful testing,
Special and exclusive footage that is being played on SATV screen.
Really coming to terms with Hamas.
Damage estimated between this entire issue.
President Trump is expected to hold bilateral talks.
preserving biodiversity and tackling climate change.
We cannot protect the planet before we negotiate peace.
Where is it going? Is it understanding the needs of its people before the needs of this global world?
For China to come to agreement,
They will face better projects.
With President Xi of China and President Lee of South Korea.
Trump's White House.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back on the last segment of International Affairs. Of course, I was joined by Norman Floyd Barnes from Washington, D.C., as well as Mohammed Musa from Islamabad, Pakistan. They have been disconnected. Coming back to the studio with John Dalton. Sir, we have exhausted the discussion regarding Middle East and all this warfare.
Yeah,
but
thank you.
The true cost of this war could be discussed, and there is another situation that we can talk about, a nation that would be after Iran. To a certain degree, we can definitely talk about Cuba. Of course, the story goes, U.S. President Donald Trump said a new dawn is coming for Cuba, arguing that American strength would soon deliver change to the island nation after 70 years. And of course, and very soon, this great strength will also bring about a day, 70 years in waiting. It's called a new dawn for Cuba. These are the words uttered by U.S. President Donald Trump at an event in Phoenix, Arizona. The question, it's no longer a question. We see a pattern establishing itself. Venezuela, Iran, maybe Cuba. If not, there was somewhere in between, Greenland, but that did not span out properly. And right now, Cuba is facing some of these issues. And we also report seeing various multimedia and media is coming out to say it is facing a severe energy crisis.
Sure. Well, they were dependent on Venezuela, and Venezuela would, it's the Hugo Chavez was selling resources to Cuba to keep them going on a subsidized basis. So they had that plus the Colombian oil. So listen, this guy is, arguably insane. Okay? He has this fascination with commanding resources all around the world. Whether it was Greenland or whether it was Venezuela or Iran, he's going after Iran, even talking about splitting the proceeds from the Gulf of Strait of Hormuz. There has not been a crazy guy like this on the planet since King Leopold of Belgium, who took over all of the Congo and owned it on his own remit, not as a Belgian process. This was King Leopold's land. And there's a famous book called King Leopold's Ghost that people can go and look at about how the Democratic Republic of Congo was under the control of this guy to capture all of the resources available. Trump is going after all of the resources available. You listen to him talking about Greenland, or talking about Venezuela. It's resources, it's money. If all of this stuff, if oil was food, the man would be a total glutton, just filling his face with whatever he could stuff in there. It's really a pathetic demonstration
Right.
of his own weakness to think that he is constantly going after resources. Cuba doesn't have any natural resources to speak of, but it's a beautiful, beautiful tourist destination. It's it's perfectly located. Millions of Canadians winter in Cuba and did in the past. Americans were prohibited from going there after 1961. But it was used to be the playground of the rich of North America. They had all the American casinos were located there. And that's what really was the difference between the people who were living in the rural agricultural communities and the rich coastal communities in Havana. That was the basis for Fidel Castro in his war. So Trump is looking at this as kind of like, okay, well, maybe I can build a hotel there. You know, maybe I can put up some resorts and recreation as I'm dreaming about the coast of Gaza. There's always this personal aggrandizement dimension for whatever Trump does. Always about money. Always about what can I get out of it personally. And I don't care how many people die. I don't care what's destroyed. Just let me get my hand on the resources. The resources in Greenland, oh, that's great. Oh, the resources in the Gulf, the resources in Venezuela. The man is just a consumer of resources and will do anything he can to put the American people under the economic strain of doing that and under the sort of the risk like, well, I didn't do anything, I'm just going to build a hotel. He's insane. I mean, there's no other way to look at that kind of a aggressive, obsessive mentality. Is that he's not demented, he's insane.
Almost, yes, calling him insane would undermine the definition of the term insane, given the acts that he has given. Let me add on to the Cuba issue here. There is some news I want to get a reaction out of you. Brazil is urging the UN Security Council to end war madness, calling for lifting of Cuba's embargo. Of course, President Lula da Silva of Brazil is criticizing Western rejection of a 2010 Iran deal and urges U.S. to end decades-long sanctions on Cuba. It's coming out very recently, just the news has just updated right here. And we know Brazil's Lula da Silva is not seeing eye to eye on certain U.S. policies, especially because of the BRICS Global South alignment that they find themselves in. And of course, opposition, Jair Bolsonaro, has been subject to various court proceedings, who is, of course, on the sidelines a very close aide to Donald Trump. So once again, Latin America seems to take the attention in my analysis. You have any comments? And of course, in Bangladesh, we see the rise of Octane, 12 hours for standing in line. Right?
I think all of the world powers are sort of lining up intellectually against Trump, not militarily and maybe not even economically. But all of them are coming to the conclusion that this guy is not a reliable partner. They cannot count on him. As Macron has said, every morning he wakes up and dreads looking at the news to see what's going to happen. And I think all of the world powers, like Brazil, Russia, China, are all living in fear of what this guy is going to do next. And while he controls the local media in the United States that sort of still portrays him as an important figure, and even going so far as to portray him as Jesus Christ on Easter Sunday, which is a good sign of somebody who's totally insane. But I think most of the world is sort of like keeping the distance from this guy. He's like the skunk at the picnic. It's like, we don't want anything to do with him, you know? So let's stand back and not get ourselves engaged with him or pay too much attention. That's why the point you made earlier about Macron and Meloni trying to come up with some sort of a coalition that could hold the world together. Because the people in Washington, the cabinet that he's assembled, and he himself, are just really like doing things that are so outside of the norm that it's unpredictable. People can't live with unpredictability.
Right. With that being said, people can't live with unpredictability. It's very important statement from John Dalton. I must thank you, sir, for your contribution and time, your valuable insights regarding so many world geopolitical issues here on the set on International Affairs.
Well, that's what happens when you're old.
You have a lot of experience seeing the world through various lenses. I also want to thank Norman Floyd Barnes from District of Columbia alongside Mohammed Musa from Islamabad. I want to end on a very moderate tone, a very moderate effect from history, I'm sure everyone would have known. Today is April 19th. This day in 1987, popular US or popular Western sitcom made its first appearance, we also known as The Simpsons. Ladies and gentlemen, ending on this very light tone, I shall see you all tomorrow.